Managing your money can feel overwhelming, but it really doesn't have to be. The truth is, most of us were never really taught how to budget, how to plan for the future, or even how to really keep track of what's coming in and what's going out. And that's why so many people get stuck or give up even trying. Whether your goal is to pay off debt, save for a big purchase, or start building wealth for the future, or if you're anything like me, all three at once. Today, I want to break it down into 5 simple steps that you can use to get control of your money. Everything in this video has worked for me, but it shouldn't be considered financial advice. You have to find your own systems that work for you. Like I said though, these are the exact strategies I've used to take my finances from feeling completely chaotic to having a system I can actually stick to. And I have actually stuck to. I went from being an impulse shopper, struggling to save, and in a permanent state of anxiety when checking my bank account, knowing that I'd only see a few pennies, to having paid off $40,000 of debt, invested $10,000, and traveled quite a bit in the process over the last year. First step is to know your numbers. Here's what I mean. You need a clear picture of your income, your fixed expenses, your debts, and of course your investments. Start with income. Go through your pay stubs for last month and write down exactly what you took home. And it's important to consider not just your salary, but any consistent side hustle work, freelance, or bonuses that you know you're gonna get. Then focus on fixed expenses. Things like your mortgage or rent, insurance, utilities, car payments, subscriptions. Everything that you know is going to come out of your bank account every single month. These are non-negotiables that happen every month, and just because you write them down doesn't mean that you can't adjust them. You just have to know what's happening right now. Next, look at your debts. I knew how much I was borrowing for school and what it would cost me. Still, even looking at it was a huge wake-up call. When I first wrote everything down, I truly realized what it meant that $1,000 a month was being eaten by my student loans. Once you know that number, you can start asking yourself better questions like, what happens if I put extra money towards this debt? How much interest will it save me? How much interest is this debt going to cost me? And how much can I free up and when? You can easily Google a debt payoff calculator and put in how much your minimum payment would take to pay off and how much you would pay in interest, and then see what would happen if you added a little extra to that payment, depending on what you can afford, but we'll talk about that in a second. And then look at your investments and savings that you already have, whether that's your 401k, a Roth IRA, or even just a savings account. That's all I started with, was a savings account. You don't need a lot to start, and you don't even need anything, but it's important to just know what you have. You have to understand your numbers, and then also I would recommend, if you do have a 401k or any sort of retirement savings, real quick, pull up another calculator, plug in your current numbers and what would happen if you continued investing at the same rate that you are, just to see where you'd be at in retirement. Truly understanding your finances also means understanding how you're paying for your future self. There's plenty of information out on the internet about how much you would need to retire, so you can kind of jump down one of those rabbit holes. Again, you just want to see how much you're going to have if you continue at the rate you are, because then you can know if you are doing enough or if you need to work towards more, or if you're doing too much and could actually free up some money right now. I only had one savings account when I started a year ago, where I had hoarded every extra dime that I made while nannying through grad school and didn't really have a plan for what to do with that money. Ultimately, it worked out that that savings account became my emergency fund, and I had that fully funded from the start of this financial journey. But had I had a more strategized plan with that money in the first place, I probably would be a little bit further ahead. And ultimately, until I got more organized with my money, I didn't really know what I had or understand how any of it was working for me. Here's the point. You cannot manage what you don't measure. I know a lot of people who aren't exactly sure what they make every single month. And if you've never added up how much your lifestyle is actually costing you, this exercise can be eye-opening. For example, if your monthly take-home is $4,000 and you are spending $2,500 of that on fixed expenses, that only leaves you with $1,500 left for your financial goals, as well as other spending. This is a workable amount of money, but if you don't actually know these numbers, then you can't actually strategize with that money. So then you can't ask yourself, how am I going to use this $1,500 towards my goals, whether that's debt, saving, or spending? And you have to know how much is left over in order for the next step to kick in. Once you know your numbers, the next step is to create realistic financial goals that align with your vision for your life. Notice I didn't just say set goals, because a lot of us set goals that aren't actually achievable. And when we can't hit them, we get discouraged and give up. Listen, I am guilty of this too. I set a goal to hit 10,000 subscribers by the end of this year, and I'm not even at the halfway mark. So go ahead and hit subscribe if you want to help me out. Don't be like me. Instead, focus on goals that you can realistically achieve. For example, paying off $10,000 of debt over 2 years, saving up 3 months of expenses in an emergency fund, or investing $500 a month towards retirement. All of these do have numbers attached, but it's likely that if you're in this position where you want to manage your money better, you'll have a little bit of extra to put towards these goals. But really, the key is both to understand how much money you can set aside every month towards a financial goal and have a realistic timeline. If you say, say I want to be debt-free someday, that's vague. But if you want to say I want to pay off my debt by December of next year, that's a bit more specific. The second piece to that is knowing what is realistic. If you have a credit card balance of $60,000 and only $1,500 left over each month to work with, it's unlikely that you will be able to pay off a debt in 12 months. So this is why you need to know your numbers before setting these goals. When I started paying off my student loans, I didn't set the goal of I'll be debt-free tomorrow. I broke it down. This year, I'll pay off $24,000. That gave me a target that I knew was realistic within my budget, and I actually ended up surpassing that. And when I did, I felt super motivated to keep going. But before you even get there, ask yourself, what do you want from life? Paying off debt is important to me because it reduces my fixed expenses to the point where I could afford to work less hours per week and have more free time to do things I love, like hiking, running, paddleboarding, all the outdoors. But I also knew I wasn't willing to give up everything in the process, especially because no matter what, this was gonna be a years-long journey. So I intentionally set aside money to travel and buy other people gifts because those things were important to me even throughout this. But I think it's important to understand how setting aside money impacts your financial journey. So rather than just setting a random number, I ran calculators to see I have $2,000 extra each month after my fixed expenses. If I put X number of dollars towards debt and X number of dollars towards savings for these lifestyle choices, how will that impact my debt payoff journey? It was okay sacrificing a few $100s towards debt each month because it would slow off my debt payoff by 6 months, but allowed me to have money to live in that time. Now for me, my debt payoff is gonna take 3 or more years, so slowing it down by 6 months is a lot, but also I wasn't willing to do absolutely nothing except pay off debt for the next 3+ years. I did the same thing while choosing to invest while paying off my debt. I simply ran the numbers in an online calculator and saw what would happen if I didn't invest any money and only paid off my debt, but also what would happen if I made my investments. So investing does slow off my debt payoff because I'm putting $800 a month towards investments between my 401k and my Roth IRA. But not doing that would have cost me hundreds of thousands of dollars at retirement. So not investing really wasn't a choice. So use your money in basic math. In fact, you don't even have to do the math. It's all in online calculators to make educated and responsible financial decisions, all based on what's important to you. What can your money do for you in the next 12 months, in the next 5 years, and even longer than that? Write it down and make it real. Now that you've set some bigger goals, step 3 is to set monthly targets that align with those goals. And this is where budgeting comes in. And don't worry, I'm not talking about a super restrictive plan that means you can never eat out again. I'm talking about assigning your money to categories that actually reflect your priorities. If you follow my channel, then you know I love my budget, and every single time I'm paid, I break down exactly what I'm doing with that money. I actually get excited when I'm able to assign money to a bucket or cover an expense. I really firmly believe in a zero-based budget where you are giving every single dollar a job. The budget that I use allows you to actually assign money to categories before you even spend it, so you can say, I'm expecting to spend $1,000 on grocery this month, so I made $4,000, I'm gonna take $1,000 of that money and fund groceries, and then you can spend from that bucket separately, but you can know you have money set aside for groceries before you even swipe your card. So in order to do this, you set realistic targets for each category. Start with the basics: housing, food, transportation. Then the necessary things: debt payments, savings, and finally fund money. And yes, fund money is important because if your budget feels like a punishment, you're not gonna stick to it. Having a specific amount set aside to spend on whatever I wanted, no questions asked, actually made budgeting more fun. And I was able to enjoy spending money more because I knew I set aside money for other goals and that the money that I was using to spend on whatever I wanted was truly for that. I actually prioritize setting money aside for myself so much that it's usually the second thing that I do with my paycheck after I make my debt payment for the month. But don't forget your goals. Let's say that you set a goal to save $6,000 this year. That's $500 a month. Or maybe you want to pay off $12,000 of debt. That's $1,000 a month. But you need to be realistic. You can cut expenses, but you also can't cut them all right now. For example, if you're paying rent and you have a 1-year lease, that is not an area that you're going to be able to decrease, at least until that lease is up. But let's say, for example, that you're spending $600 a month eating out and you feel like you can cut that down to $300. You've just freed up $300 to put towards a financial goal. That's why seeing your targets all out on paper or on a spreadsheet and then seeing how much you have left over is very helpful to understanding how you're going to make progress towards your financial goals. When it comes to cutting areas, don't burn yourself out. Don't cut your budget from $600 to $100 unless it's truly mindless spending that you know you can do by being a little more conscious of your time. Like everything in life, small sustainable changes are going to be what keep you on track and make the biggest difference. The easiest things to cut back on are going to be the things that you're doing mindlessly or that don't add value to your life. For example, maybe you stop at a gas station on your way to work every day to buy an energy drink and a quick snack, and just a little bit of planning would allow you to buy those things in bulk at the grocery store and pack them with you instead of paying spending extra money at a gas station. Maybe you tend to make impulse purchases that you justify when you're walking around a store, but when you look back, you don't really remember what you spent whatever number of dollars on, and so you can switch to doing drive up for the things that you truly need instead. Maybe you keep going to the same bar with friends when you'd rather be out for a walk or hiking, and you can just switch that habit altogether. How do you know if these little expenses are adding up? Well, that's the next step. And if you know me, you know it's my favorite. This is a step that most people skip, but it is the one that makes or breaks your plan, and it is to track every single dollar per month. Because again, what gets measured gets managed. You don't have to overcomplicate this, but I also think it's something that you should be involved in the process of, and not by using an app that does it for you automatically. There's a spreadsheet that allows me to assign money towards monthly targets and track my expenses all in one. It is linked down below. When I started tracking, I realized I was spending $200 a month on little convenience things. Coffee runs, random Target trips. None of these felt like a big deal in the moment, but when I saw at the end of the month how much it added up and how little I remembered each purchase, it actually made me feel sick to my stomach. And then I had to ask myself why I was having that reaction. And the answer was because I didn't feel like any of it did anything to add to my quality of life. In the moment, I was happy and excited about buying something, anything. But overall, when I looked at each line item written down on paper and how much it was actually costing me, I realized it wasn't adding anything to my life. Now that I am a lot more intentional about what I spend on because I'm involved in tracking my finances, I feel so much more fulfilled by what I'm buying. I've stopped buying impulsive treats and started spending money on experiences, whether it's dinners out with friends, travel, or concert tickets. I actually spend way less, but my life feels so much more full. And there's no more stress around spending because I know I've hit all of my other goals because I am tracking them. One other benefit of tracking your expenses is that you will catch fraud a lot faster because you're actually looking at each expense. Tracking builds awareness. And once you have awareness, you can make better, more fulfilling choices that lead to actually feeling rich rather than spending more. Finally, step 5, organize and automate your finances where it makes sense. Now, automating for you might look different than it does for a friend. I have a few things that are truly automated and set to auto pay, and a few things that are so routine it feels automatic, even though I'm handling them manually. Let me explain. My credit cards are all set to auto pay as a backup, so I never miss a payment, but I do usually manually pay the statement before it's even due. I manually pay my student loans because it is very motivating to see the balance go down. My investments do automatically transfer from my bank account, but I go in and I manually invest them. I manually track my expenses, but I do it every Monday and every other Friday when I get paid. And again, it's a routine that feels automatic, and also doing it regularly helps me keep it so that it's less than 5 minutes. Overall, if you want to succeed with your money, the less you rely on willpower, the better. But that doesn't mean that you have to do everything behind the scenes. I actually think being involved in the process makes it more exciting and more interesting. So use true automation to avoid overdrafting or missing payments, and use manual routines to ensure that you are involved with your money and seeing the progress to the goals that you set. Once your routines are in place, you won't even have to think that hard about your money. It just gets managed. So there you have it. That's 5 simple steps to manage your money. Once again, know your numbers, create realistic goals, set monthly targets, track your spending, and organize and automate appropriately. If you found this video helpful, make sure you give it a like and subscribe to follow along on my personal finance journey. I'd love to hear in the comments which of these 5 steps do you think you're going to start with this week. Remember, money management isn't about being perfect, it's about creating a system that actually works for you and sticking with it long enough to see results.